The outcast engineer. Dr. Elena Reyes stood alone in the vast salvage yard of New Gibraltar Station, her breath fogging the inside of her environment suit as she examined the twisted heap of alien metal before her. Most saw garbage. She saw possibility. The alien wreck had been gathering dust for decades, ever since humanity's first encounters with the Arxos Confederation. The Confederation's archaeologists had dismissed it as primitive technology from a long-dead civilization, not worth their time. But Elena saw something they'd missed. Logging another salvage inspection, Dr. Reyes. The station A's voice carried a note of weary familiarity. This was her 100th visit to this particular piece of garbage. The metallurgical structure is responsive, ARI. Elena replied, running her scanner over the hull's surface. It reacts to electrical currents in patterns that suggest neural pathways. Nobody else has noticed because they're all looking for traditional circuitry. The scan results flicker across her helmet display, confirming what she'd suspected for months. The metal wasn't just conducting energy. It was processing it, learning from it. A deep thrum emanated from the wreck as her scanner's electrical field touched it, like a sleeping giant stirring. Dr. Reyes, Araya's voice held a note of concern. I'm detecting unusual power fluctuations. Safety protocols suggest immediate evacuation of the area. Elena ignored the warning, her heart racing as she placed her gloved hand against the hull. The metal was warm, despite the vacuum of space. Araya, record everything. The structure isn't just responding to electrical input, it's adapting to it. Each scan produces a slightly different reaction. It's learning. Her tablet chimed with yet another rejection notice from the Naval Research Board. Project denied. Proposed theories contradict established xenotechnology principles. Elena laughed bitterly. The Arxos had taught humanity so much about spaceflight and engineering, and now their textbooks were treated like gospel. Any deviation was considered heresy. The metal beneath her hand pulsed again, stronger this time. Warning lights flashed across her helmet display. But Elena stood her ground. She'd spent 5 years studying xenorchaeology, 3 more in advanced engineering, only to be relegated to salvage inspection because her theories were too radical. What were you? She whispered to the ancient wreck. What kind of civilization built you? And why did the Arxos dismiss you so quickly? A new alert flashed, her supervisor, demanding she return to the station immediately. Elena sighed, making one final scan. As she turned to leave, her boot caught on a piece of debris. She stumbled, her hand pressing hard against a different section of the hull. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy cascaded through the metal, patterns of light rippling across its surface. Elena's suit sensors screamed warnings as her scanner overloaded, but she couldn't look away. In that moment of unplanned contact, the metal had done more than respond. It had reached out. "Arai," she gasped. "Tell me you recorded that." "Affirmative, Dr. Reyes. Though I should note that initiating unauthorized contact with unclassified alien artifacts violates at least 15 safety protocols." "Add it to my file." Elena was already pulling up the scan data. This isn't just reactive metal. It's a neural interface. The entire hull is one massive, distributed consciousness. That's why the Arxos couldn't understand it. They were looking for computers, engines, reactors, discrete systems. This ship, it's all one system, one mind. She worked frantically, downloading the data before her supervisor could shut down her access. The implications were staggering. If she was right, this wasn't just a new type of spacecraft. It was a completely different approach to space travel. Instead of building ships with separate systems working in sequence, this civilization had created vessels that functioned like living organisms, every part working in perfect synchronization. "Your shift ended 20 minutes ago, Dr. Reyes," Araya reminded her. "Security has been notified." Elena nodded absently, completing the final download. Let them come. She had what she needed, proof that there were other ways to reach the stars, ways that the Arxos had never imagined. weighs that humanity, with its tendency to think outside established parameters, might be uniquely suited to explore. The salvage yard's floodlights snapped on, harsh white light reflecting off the hull's now quiet surface. Security would be here soon, probably with another reprimand about unauthorized research. Elena smiled, tucking her tablet securely into her suit. They could reprimand her all they wanted. She just discovered something that would change everything. Assuming, of course, she could convince anyone to look past their preconceptions long enough to see it. As she walked toward the approaching security team, Elena cast one last look at the ancient vessel. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'll be back. And next time, we're going to wake you up properly." The impossible integration. Unauthorized access to restricted materials. Please step away from the containment field. Elena ignored the automated warning, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface as she initiated another neural mapping sequence. The alien hull fragment in the makeshift lab pulsed with a soft, bluish light, responding to her probes in ways that defied conventional physics. "Dr. Reyes," a familiar voice came from the doorway. "This is becoming a habit." Elena didn't look up. "Director Chen, here to shut me down again." The director stepped into the lab, his weathered face reflecting the hull's ethereal glow. "The board is concerned. You've submitted 7 requests for official research status in the past month, each one more unconventional than the last. Because conventional thinking isn't working." Elena pulled up a holographic display showing complex energy patterns. "Look at this. The metal doesn't just conduct energy. It processes it, adapts to it. It's more like a nervous system than a hull. And you believe this relates to the recent Arxos incursions." Chen's tone was carefully neutral. Elena finally turned to face him. 3 colonies lost in the past year. Their ships appear from nowhere, ignore our strongest shields like they're not even there, and disappear before we can respond. The Arxos claim they're as baffled as we are. And you think this piece of ancient garbage holds the answer? I think whoever built this understood something about space travel that we've forgotten. Something the Arxos never knew in the first place. She gestured to her displays. "We build ships like machines, separate systems working in sequence. This was built like an organism, every part connected, aware, adaptive." Chen was silent for a long moment, studying the data. "You need a team." Elena blinked. "What? If, and I stress if, there's anything to your theories, you'll need help to prove it." He smiled slightly. "I may have a few other problematic researchers who might be interested." Hours later, Elena stood before her newly assembled team in the larger lab Chen had quietly authorized. Dr. Kira Patel, a quantum computing specialist whose theories about AI consciousness had gotten her quietly shuffled into theoretical research. Marcus Wong, a propulsion engineer who'd been laughed out of 3 prestigious positions for his ideas about biological drives. And Dr. James Henderson, a xenobiologist whose paper on silicon-based neural networks had nearly ended his career. "So," Kira said, examining the hull fragment, "you're saying this entire ship was essentially one living organism." "More like a coral reef," Elena explained. "Individual systems working in perfect harmony, each one aware of and responding to the others. No central computer, no bridge, no engine room. Every part could adapt to serve any function needed." "That's impossible," Marcus muttered, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "The energy requirements alone." "Unless," James interrupted, "the energy itself is part of the neural network. Not just powering the systems, but carrying information, allowing the whole structure to think and adapt as one." Elena grinned. They got it. Where others saw impossibility, they saw potential. The next weeks were a blur of discovery and setback. The hull responded differently to each person who touched it, learning, adapting. They discovered that strong emotions seemed to strengthen the connection. Fear made it defensive, curiosity made it receptive. "It's not just responding to electrical impulses," Kira announced one evening. her hands covered in sensor pads. It's responding to intent. The neural interface doesn't just read signals, it reads purpose. Marcus looked up from his own experiments. That could explain how it handles propulsion. Instead of calculating thrust vectors and power distributions, it simply understands where it wants to go and adapts accordingly. Like a sea creature swimming, James added, you don't think about activating specific muscles in sequence. You think forward, and your body figures out the rest. Elena touched the hull, feeling the now familiar warmth. But we still can't wake it up completely. It's like it's waiting for something. Or someone. Kira said softly. Elena, what if it's not just waiting for the right input? What if it's waiting for the right partner? The implications hit Elena like a physical force. It's not just a ship that thinks. It's a ship that bonds with its crew. That's why the Arxos couldn't understand it. They were trying to control it, not connect with it. Which means, Marcus said slowly, if we want to make this work, we need to stop trying to make it work like our ships. Elena finished. We need to learn to work like it does. The next day, they began rebuilding their lab. Traditional control interfaces were replaced with neural sensors. Standard diagnostic tools were modified to measure consciousness rather than just power flows. They weren't just studying the technology anymore. They were learning to communicate with it. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Elena was alone in the lab, running yet another series of tests, when something changed. The hull's glow shifted from blue to a deep, resonant purple, and in her mind, she felt presence. Hello, she whispered, both aloud and in her thoughts. The response wasn't in words, but in feelings, images, sensations, space, stars, movement, the joy of flight, the deep bond between ship and crew. And underneath it all, a question, a yearning to fly again. Elena's hand shook as she activated the lab's comm. Everyone get down here. Now. By the time the team arrived, she was laughing and crying at the same time. It worked. It's awake. And it wants to show us something. The hull pulsed with renewed energy, and in their minds, they all saw it. The ship as it once was, not a collection of systems, but a living whole. And they understood what they had to do next. Director Chen, Elena said into her comm, her voice steady despite her excitement. We're going to need a bigger lab. And access to the rest of that wreck. In the containment field, the hull fragment glowed like a star being born, ready to teach humanity a new way to reach for the stars. First contact, first blood. The alert came at 300 station time. Elena was in the integration chamber, deep in neural sync with what they now called the Orpheus Project, when Aria's voice cut through her concentration. Priority alert. Unknown vessels detected in the Artemis colony system. No response to hails. Colonial Defense Forces engaging. Elena's eyes snapped open, the neural interface translating her surge of concern to the ship consciousness around her. The reconstructed hull thrummed in response, sharing her alarm. Show me. The holographic display materialized, showing grainy long-range sensor data, 3 ships of unknown configuration, moving with impossible grace through Artemis's defense grid. As she watched, colonial defense ships exploded in silent bursts of light, their weapons seemingly passing straight through the attackers. They're using the same phase shift technology that hit the other colonies, Marcus said, rushing into the chamber. Conventional weapons can't touch them. Time to arrival of nearest response fleet. Elena asked, already knowing the answer. 6 hours minimum. Kira replied from her station. Artemis doesn't have that long. Elena felt the ship's response through their neural link. Eagerness, readiness, a desire to protect. The emotion resonated with her own feelings, amplifying them. Director Chen, she called out, knowing he'd be monitoring. We need launch clearance. The Orpheus isn't ready, Chen's voice crackled through the comm. Integration is only at 60%, weapons are untested, and we haven't even attempted a full power-up sequence. Those are our people out there, Elena said quietly. Through the neural link, she felt her team's agreement, their determination mixing with the ship's own consciousness. And we're not going to watch them die. A long pause. You realize this is exactly what the Arxos Confederation warned us about, rushing to deploy untested technology. Maybe it's time we stopped letting the Arxos tell us what we can and can't do. Elena placed her hand on the hull, feeling the warm resonance of connection. We're launching, Director. The only question is whether we do it with or without authorization. Another pause. God help me. Launch clearance granted. Try not to start an interstellar war. The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos as they prepared for emergency launch. The Orpheus wasn't just a ship you powered up. It was a consciousness you had to wake carefully, gradually. But there wasn't time for gradual anymore. Neural sync at maximum, Kira reported, her voice tense as they pushed the integration protocols far beyond their tested limits. Elena, if we try to wake it too fast. We're not waking it. Elena interrupted, an idea forming. We're asking it to wake itself. She closed her eyes, focusing on the neural link. Instead of trying to control the ship's systems, she opened herself completely to its consciousness, sharing her urgency, her need, her determination to protect. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Orpheus didn't just wake, it surged to life, every system activating in perfect harmony. Displays lit up across the chamber as power readings spiked off the scales. That's impossible, Marcus whispered, staring at his readouts. The energy patterns, it's not just using power, it's creating it, adapting it. Everyone to your stations, Elena commanded, feeling the ship's eagerness matching her own. James, biological systems. All responding. The xenobiologist reported. The hull is, I don't even have words for what it's doing. It's like watching evolution in real time. Elena settled into the neural interface cradle they'd adapted from the original Rex design. This wasn't a traditional bridge. It was a synchronization chamber, where ship and crew could think and act as one. Artemis Colony is 3 light-years away. Standard drives would take us days to get there. We don't have days, Kira said, linking into her own interface. We don't even have hours. Elena smiled as she felt the Orpheus's response. We don't need them. Everyone brace for, well, for whatever happens next. Araya, open the space doors. The massive doors slid apart, revealing the star-filled void. Elena didn't activate engines or plot courses. She simply shared with the ship their desperate need to reach Artemis, to save their people. The Orpheus understood. Space itself seemed to bend. What the hell? Marcus yelled as reality distorted around them. That's not a jump drive or a warp field. It's showing us how it used to fly. Elena finished, understanding flowing through the neural link. Stop trying to measure it and feel it. The universe blurred, stretched, and snapped back into focus. Artemis' star burned bright ahead of them. The journey had taken seconds. Multiple contacts, Kira reported, her voice steadying as she adapted to the impossible. 3 unknown vessels, still engaged with colonial defenses. They're heading for the main habitat dome. Elena reached out through the neural link, feeling her crew's connections strengthening, synchronizing. The Orpheus wasn't just responding to them anymore. It was thinking with them, moving with them. They weren't flying a ship. They were becoming one. Let's introduce ourselves, Elena said softly. And through the link, as one, they moved. The Orpheus struck like a thunderbolt from ancient myth. While the attackers' phase shift technology made them immune to conventional weapons, they couldn't hide from a ship that could perceive and adapt to multiple layers of reality simultaneously. The hull shifted, matched their phase state, and suddenly the untouchable enemy became very touchable indeed. The first attacker never saw them coming. The Orpheus flowed around it like water, every part of its living hull adapting, analyzing, countering. The enemy vessel's shields shattered under attacks that came from angles that shouldn't have existed. They're trying to regroup, Marcus reported unnecessarily. They could all feel it through the link. Their weapons. The enemy's response was devastating, or would have been, against a normal ship. But the Orpheus didn't just dodge the attacks. It absorbed them, learned from them, adapted to them. Each hit made them stronger, smarter, more adaptive. The second ship fell as they turned its own energy weapons back on it, the Orpheus's hull channeling and redirecting the power in ways that violated half a dozen laws of physics. The third tried to flee, its engines creating a distortion field that should have been impossible to follow. Should have been. The Orpheus flowed through space like a living thing, anticipating its prey's movements, cutting off every escape route. When the end came, it was swift and certain. In the aftermath, as colonial rescue ships approached the now secure system, Alina finally allowed herself to relax the neural link slightly. Status. Ship is happy, James reported, wonder in his voice. These patterns. It's not just fighting, Alina. It's growing, learning, evolving. Multiple incoming transmissions, Kira added. Arxos Confederation is demanding explanations. Colonial Command wants a full report. And Director Chen is asking if we're still in one piece. Alina smiled, feeling the Orpheus's satisfaction mixing with her own. Tell them that humanity just changed the rules of space combat, and we're just getting started. Through the neural link, she felt the ship's agreement. And something more. A warning. The beings they'd just fought. They weren't the real threat. They were scouts, tests, precursors to something far more dangerous. We'll be ready, Alina whispered, both to her crew and to the ship that had become part of them. Together, the Orpheus's hull pulsed with light, its consciousness intertwined with theirs, ready to face whatever came next. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in following established rules. It was in breaking them, adapting them, evolving beyond them. The real war was coming, and they would meet it as something entirely new, not just humans, not just a ship, but a perfect synthesis of both. Evolution's next step. The pattern breakers. The Arxos Confederation's Emergency Council chamber hummed with tension as Alina faced the assembled representatives. Behind her, through the vast viewing window, the Orpheus floated in space, its living hull shifting with patterns of light that made the Arxos visibly uncomfortable. You've violated every principle of safe technological development, First Speaker Calix declared, his crystalline features refracting light in patterns that indicated extreme agitation. Integrating with unknown technology, deploying it without proper testing, exposing our civilizations to incalculable risk. While you were calculating risks, Alina replied evenly, 3 human colonies were destroyed. We acted. We saved lives. And in doing so, you may have doomed us all. The first speaker gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the chamber center. We've decoded more of the transmissions from the attacking vessels. They were scouts for a species that calls themselves the Axiom. The display showed a vast fleet of ships, their designs somehow hurting Alina's eyes to look at. They moved with the same impossible grace as the scouts, but there was something more, something fundamentally wrong about their movements. The Axiom, Calix continued, represent the ultimate evolution of technological civilization. They've transcended organic existence, becoming pure mathematical perfection. They discover emerging spacefaring races, analyze them, and eliminate those they deem inefficient. Through her neural link with the distant Orpheus, Alina felt her crew's reactions mixing with the ship's own understanding. You've encountered them before, she said, not a question. 300 years ago, we survived only by proving our worth, by showing them our dedication to logical, orderly technological progress, by demonstrating that we could be predictable. Alina laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet chamber. Predictable. That's why you've been so desperate to control humanity's development. You're not trying to help us. You're trying to make us safe, controllable. We are trying to save you. Calix's crystalline form vibrated with emotion. The Axiom are returning, Their scouts have been testing all known civilizations, measuring our responses, calculating our threat potential. If humanity continues to demonstrate unpredictable behavior, they'll what? Try to destroy us. Alina gestured to the reports of their battle at Artemis. Their scouts already tried. We stopped them. You stopped 3 scouts. The Axiom fleet numbers in the thousands. The first speaker's voice softened. Please. There's still time. Decommission the Orpheus. Return to established technological principles. We can help you present a proper face to the Axiom. Prove your civilization's worth through order and logic. Elena felt the Orpheus's response through the neural link, not just disagreement, but understanding. The ship had faced something like the Axiom before, in its ancient past. It had been part of a civilization that chose to fight rather than submit. A civilization that... You know what happened to the Orpheus's creators, she said suddenly. You found more than just a wreck, didn't you? You found their story. Calix's silence was answer enough. Tell me. The first speaker sighed. A sound like wind through crystal. They were like you. Unpredictable. Creative. They refused to conform to the Axiom standards of civilization. They fought, using technology that violated the very laws of physics as the Axiom understood them, and they were destroyed, utterly and completely. Except they weren't. Elena smiled. The Orpheus survived. And more importantly, its ideas survived. The concept that ships could be grown, not built. That technology could adapt and evolve. That the key to advancement wasn't in following rules, but in breaking them to find something better. She stood. Humanity won't be following your path, first speaker. We won't be proving ourselves to the Axiom by becoming predictable. We'll prove ourselves by being exactly what we are. Adaptable, innovative, and impossible to calculate. They will come for you first, Calix warned. Your Orpheus project represents everything they despise. Chaos, unpredictability, the merger of organic and mechanical in ways that defy mathematical perfection. Good. Elena turned to leave, then paused. The Orpheus's creators. They fought alone, didn't they? No allies. No support. They chose their path. And we're choosing ours. But we're offering you a choice too. She faced the council again. You've spent centuries living in fear, constraining yourselves to fit the Axiom's definition of acceptable civilization. We're offering you a chance to remember who you were before that fear, to evolve again. The chamber erupted in discussion, crystalline voices chiming in discord. Elena didn't wait for their response. Through the neural link, she felt her crew's readiness, the Orpheus's eagerness to move, to act, to evolve. Back aboard their ship, Elena settled into the neural interface as reports came in from across human space. More scout ships had been detected, testing defenses, analyzing responses, learning, adapting, preparing. The Arxos are right about one thing, Kira said, linking into her station. The Axiom will target us first. The Orpheus represents everything they're trying to eliminate from the galaxy. Let them try. James's voice carried the same eager readiness Elena felt through the ship's consciousness. Every attack makes us stronger. Every encounter teaches us more. We need to share this technology, Marcus added. Not hoard it like the Arxos wanted us to. Spread it. Let it grow. Let it evolve in new ways. Elena nodded, feeling the Orpheus's agreement. Humanity's greatest strength isn't in our technology. It's in our creativity, our adaptability, our willingness to break patterns and try the impossible. Through the view screens, she watched the Arxos ships maintaining their precise, predictable formations. Already she could see signs that their encounter had affected them. Subtle variations in their patterns, tiny breaks in their rigid order. The Axiom want a perfect, predictable galaxy, she said softly. Let's show them why imperfection is evolution's greatest weapon. The Orpheus's hull pulsed with light, its consciousness intertwined with theirs, ready to break every rule ever written about what was possible in space. The real war was coming. and humanity would meet it by being exactly what they were born to be: the pattern breakers, the rule breakers, the ones who looked at mathematical perfection and dared to imagine something better. Evolution's children. The Axiom arrived with mathematical precision, their vast fleet emerging from hyperspace in perfect geometric formations. 3,000 ships, each one a testament to technological perfection, arranged in patterns that spoke of calculations beyond organic comprehension. Delina stood in the Orpheus's synchronization chamber, watching through the neural link as humanity's response unfolded. Not in orderly formations or predictable patterns, but in a chaos that held its own kind of beauty. 50 ships of the new Orpheus class moved to meet the threat, each one different, each one evolved in its own unique way. Some had developed crystalline hulls that channeled energy like living prisms. Others had grown organic armor that learned from every hit. No two were exactly alike. They couldn't be, not when their very nature was to adapt and change. The Arxos ships are holding position, Kira reported, her consciousness flowing through the neural link. Still trying to decide if they're going to help us or join the Axiom. They'll choose, Alina replied, feeling the Orpheus's agreement. When the moment comes, they'll remember who they were before fear taught them to be perfect. The Axiom fleet's response came as a transmission, broadcast on all frequencies in pure mathematical equations. Through their neural link, the Orpheus translated: organic civilization, designation, humanity. Analysis, chaotic, evolution trajectory, unemployed. Total 380 ASC assassinant, maximum. Suon CLUs. Extinction required. Well, Marcus commented through the link. At least we made an impression. The Axiom attack began with perfect, terrible symmetry. Their weapons carved geometric patterns through space itself, each shot calculated to intersect with their target's predicted movements. Against conventional ships, it would have been devastatingly effective. But humanity's ships didn't move according to predictions. They flowed, adapted, evolved with every passing second. The Orpheus led the charge, its living hull singing with the combined consciousness of ship and crew, breaking physical laws that the Axiom had calculated as immutable. They're trying to analyze our patterns, James reported, excitement flowing through the neural link. But we don't have patterns. Every ship is responding differently, evolving differently. Elena felt it through the link, the Axiom's growing confusion as their perfect calculations failed to account for the sheer unpredictability of their opponents. Each human ship was a unique consciousness, a blend of organic creativity and technological adaptation that defied mathematical modeling. The first Axiom ship fell to a weapon that hadn't existed 10 seconds earlier, evolved in the heat of battle by one of the new Orpheus-class vessels. The second was destroyed by an impossible maneuver that broke 3 laws of physics simultaneously. But the Axiom adapted quickly, their vast computational power shifting to account for new variables. Their attacks became more precise, more targeted, seeking to eliminate the most unpredictable elements first. They're learning. Kira warned as an Orpheus-class ship exploded under concentrated fire, starting to predict our unpredictability. Elena smiled, feeling the original Orpheus's excitement. Then let's show them why that's impossible. Everyone. Full neural synchronization. Show them what happens when humanity stops trying to calculate and starts trying to create. The neural link expanded, deepened, until the boundary between human and ship consciousness began to blur. Elena felt her crew's minds merging with the Orpheus's ancient wisdom, creating something entirely new. The ship's hull began to change, patterns of light flowing across its surface in ways that made the Axiom's sensors crash trying to analyze them. They weren't just adapting anymore. They were creating new laws of physics, new ways of existing in space. Pattern analysis impossible. The Axiom broadcast, their perfect mathematical language showing signs of strain. Subject demonstrates prohibited levels of creative evolution. Through the neural link, Elena felt the moment the Arxos made their choice. Their crystalline ships broke formation, abandoning eons of rigid doctrine, to flow into battle alongside humanity. Not in perfect patterns, but in beautiful chaos. The Axiom response was immediate and devastating. Their weapons carved through space with redoubled fury, trying to impose order on what they saw as dangerous chaos. But with each attack, their targets evolved, adapted, became something new and impossible to predict. They're reaching their computational limits, Marcus reported with joy. Their models can't keep up with the rate of change. Elena felt it through the neural link, the fundamental flaw in the Axiom's perfect civilization. They had achieved mathematical perfection by eliminating chaos, but in doing so, they had lost the ability to truly evolve. They could calculate infinite variations, but they couldn't create new ones. Together, she broadcast to all ships, human and Arxos alike. Show them why evolution chose chaos over perfection. The response was beyond anything Elena had imagined. Every ship moved as one, not in formation but in harmony, each bringing its own unique chaos to the battle. The Orpheus led the charge. Its consciousness expanded beyond its original design, growing and changing with each passing moment. The Axiom fleet's perfect formations began to break as their calculations failed to account for weapons that evolved mid-flight, defenses that adapted faster than they could be analyzed, and ships that moved in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "They're retreating," Kira announced, disbelief coloring her thoughts through the neural link. The perfect civilization is running from chaos. But Elena felt something else through the link. Understanding. The Axiom weren't just retreating. They were experiencing something they had forgotten eons ago. The power of uncertainty, the beauty of chaos, the necessity of evolution. As the last Axiom ships disappeared into hyperspace, their final transmission came not in pure mathematics, but in something closer to wonder. Ein eolizes Tyroid Shift required. Evolution continues. In the aftermath, as human and Arxos ships began the process of repairing and evolving from the battle, Elena stood in the Orpheus's synchronization chamber, feeling the ship's consciousness pulse with satisfaction. "You knew," she said softly. "Your creators didn't just fight the Axiom. They were trying to show them what they'd lost, what we all risk losing when we choose perfection over possibility." The ship's response flowed through the neural link, not in words or images, but in pure creative potential. The joy of evolution, the beauty of unpredictability, the infinite possibilities that arose from embracing chaos rather than fearing it. "Message from the Arxos Council," Kira reported. "They're requesting guidance on beginning their own Orpheus program. They say it's time to remember how to evolve." Elena smiled, feeling her crew's satisfaction mixing with the ship's ancient wisdom. Humanity hadn't just survived the perfect civilization. They had reminded the galaxy why imperfection was evolution's greatest gift. "Take us home," she said, both to her crew and to the ship that had become part of them. "We've got a lot of evolving to do."